Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the revelations around the evidence being withheld and concealed around the January 6th Banana Republic debacle. Now, I just want to talk sort of generally about the procedural, or some of the procedural issues here. Now, having been someone who's had to prepare court documents and go through the court process, and primarily in Australia, but also elsewhere, in the United States in a limited extent, I've got some knowledge of the procedural issues here, not in criminal, but in corporate law and that sort of stuff. But the basic requirements that before charges can be laid, before people can be detained, complete disclosure of evidence, including evidence that may exonerate the accused, and so on. This the law, the rules around this are very clear. There's no real ambiguity here. If the state has evidence that they're going to use to accuse or bring charges against a citizen, then they've got to declare all that evidence that they have, not just cherry pick a few bits and pieces. So, for example, to illustrate the point here, let's suppose that somebody approaches a person A and they've got a gun in their hand, they're pointing at person A's head, and then person A pulls out their own gun and shoots back in self-defense. Now, if you edit that video, you could make it look like, if you cut out the bit where person A is holding the gun and pointing it, and if you cut out all that and just have the last sort of moment when the person pulls out their gun and defends themselves, if you just have that, you could say, well, look, that's murder, because you see that person's shooting the other. But in reality, of course, you see the whole video. So this is in essence what in my opinion, what the government did with the January 6th accused. Now, I should make it clear that this wasn't a normal criminal trial or criminality really of any type. In my misdemeanors and things like that. Sure, there's a few people that I think broke windows, property damage. Okay, that they should be held to account for that in the same way that Black Lives Matter and Antifa were held to account, which means not held to account, by the way. But there was no criminal act that anybody has been able to outline or indicate or prove so far. So the best we can come up with is the very inventive and creative one, that preventing the legislative process from moving forward. That's drawing a very long bow there. The other one was trespass. So I think it's very, very hard to look at any criminal activity, any criminal activity by any of the protesters in that on that day. So we have to accept it's an ideological trial. It's those who think they're in charge, and whether they're legitimately in charge or not, we can debate that separately. But they went to great lengths to make sure that they were the winning side on the processes leading up to that day. They went to great lengths, and they weren't going to let people call that into question or delegitimize it anyway. So their counterattacking had all the hallmarks of a vicious tyrannical regime dealing with its opponents. This was not the response of a calm legal process where there was clear law breaking and clear punishments and charges and investigations, court hearings to punish those concerned. It was not that. It was never that at any time, in my view. So I just want to look at some dates here now. Let's sort of look at, people were being arrested, pretty soon after during January and into early February. People were being arrested pretty quickly, and and they were being put into prison in hearings that kept in detention. So what had this? The government was going to the going to a court and saying, look, we think this guy did some bad things, or this person did some bad things. We don't actually have the evidence. We're going to go out and gather the evidence, but before we can list the charges, and it is, this person committed this crime, that crime, that crime. Till we can do that, we've got to spend some time going away, looking at the evidence. There's a lot of footage in the cameras. We've got to go through that and so on. Now, no expense or resource was spared in going after these people. Entire teams of SWAT teams of FBI agents are running around, scooping people up all over the place. So there's no shortage of resources here. So you wouldn't think it would take very long. They'd want to get these guys into court, list the charges, say this person did this, and this, Your Honour, and we want the motherfuckers locked up. So, you think they'd really go for it. But instead, the arrest process was again, all resources of the state were put at the disposal of finding and arresting these people. But suddenly the state seemed to have no resources to go and find the crimes they'd committed or to be able to list them. So I just want you to imagine this. Now, you're a judge in court and the government flunky, and they weren't using high-powered lawyers and prosecutors. I mean, some of the prosecutors they're using were children, affirmative action people, minorities from bullshit colleges that were prosecutors that were coming in with the accused. So we're not talking high-powered players here, far from it. A lot of them were children, spoke like children. The documents that they'd filed were just piss poor pieces of ideological raving and ranting. These weren't lists of crimes. So they really were ginning it up. An insurrection were evil people. They tried to overthrow the government. Killers, murderers, insurrectionists. And so the language used, the flowery language used in the prosecution documents was inflammatory beyond belief. It was terrifying. It was horrific, breathless gasps everywhere, but no actual crimes that were committed. So you're a judge, and some government flunky comes in, so we got to put that person in prison because horrific, be dramatic, But okay, the judge should say, all right, that's wonderful. Thank you for the inflammatory rhetoric. What crimes has this person, what crimes are you alleging? And what evidence do you have to back it up? Well, we're kind of not really, insurrection, treason, and we'll go away and find the evidence. Can you just keep them in prison while we go away and find it? All right, then. So okay, thanks for that. What threat does this person pose to the community? Have they injured anyone, attacked anyone? Have they threatened to attack anyone? Have they murdered somebody? Have they stolen something? Did they commit arson, or did they destroy property in the and do you have video evidence or any evidence, witnesses and so on, that this person did anything that would be anything beyond the misdemeanor? You don't put people in prison for breaking a window. So now, if they'd done that, the government would have to come back. Well, no, we actually don't. But just give us some time, and we'll work something out. Now, that's an old tyrant's trick of just arrest someone, then busily go about trying to find something they may have done. And if you can't find anything, invent something. Bribe a witness to say, yeah, I saw Billy Bob doing such and such, and then that's enough. And so these people came into court, the government came into court with no particular evidence, a bunch of very inflammatory and excitable sort of allegations of, and a judge agrees to put someone in prison for, well, nothing. 5 officers died on that day. All right, then, who are these officers? Show me the names of these officers and the proof, the evidence you have that they died on that day and this person was responsible for it, or indirectly responsible for it. And they couldn't do it, and they wouldn't have been able to do it. So the allegations made and the verbal follow-up of drama, murder, mayhem, insurrection, overthrowing the government, and mega. This wasn't evidence. It was flowery rhetoric, but it wasn't evidence. And I'll come back to the evidence bar being set very low, and various courts that when they were desperately trying to oppose Donald Trump's legislative program, when 2017, 18, that sort of thing, how judges would accept evidence that Trump once said at a rally that he didn't believe that people should be allowed to walk in across the border without being checked because some of them might be criminals or whatever. So that proves that he's a racist. Therefore, it proves that whatever he wants to do is racist. Therefore, it proves that he's against human rights. Therefore, it proves it should be struck down. So the most tenuous relationship between what somebody may have said at a political rally and what the alleged intent behind the legislation. These these legal arguments that weren't legal arguments, there was no facts in that. They are meant to draw this incredible relationship between an utterance and then a legislative intent and an implementation. And I was staggered that any court would accept that, but many courts did. They accepted that very, very low bar of the relationship. And this was the same low bar relationship that was used in these arguments by these lawyers trying to arbitrarily detain, against the writ of habeas corpus, by the way, detain the accused people who'd committed no crime, trespass maybe, if you want to, but who'd committed no crime, certainly no capital crime, no crime that would require or necessitate or justify detention, for example. So the relationship they were drawing, the government was drawing, and so, these people are insurrection, keep them in prison. And an activist judge, because you would have to be an activist, in my view, to accept this, because any judge that's concerned about the law and due legal process, no, you haven't produced any evidence these people have done anything. You want me to put them in prison indefinitely while you go away and take whatever amount of time you want to maybe find some evidence? And you don't even know what that evidence is or where you're going to get it from. You go, no, I'm not putting that person in prison. No, come back to me with real evidence and then we can talk. That sort of thing. That's what a real judge, in my view, would have done. But instead, judges, I'll keep them in prison indefinitely. How long do you want to go and get your evidence? I don't know. It'll be a while. There's a lot of stuff to go through. When we find something, we'll get back to you and go, okay. That was how low the bar was. I mean, really, you couldn't imagine a lower bar of evidence being given to the government prosecutors than by their two-bit flunky lawyers and prosecutors. So these people, these suspects. Remember, they're suspects. Nothing has been proven at this point. The government says they've got evidence, but nothing's been proven. Now, not all these people are rich. A lot of them don't really have any money. They've got budget lawyers or legal aid lawyers or something. They're not rich people at all. Some groups have volunteered. The pro bono lawyers that the BLM and the Antifa guys can get are armies of pro bono lawyers. They're just free legal aid everywhere you look. But with these people, no, got to pay for it yourself, buddy. You damn fucking insurrectionist. Whereas the Antifa guys, the arsonists, the murderers, the bashings, the so on, they all get the free legal aid. Just ponder that for a moment, if you will. So anyway, these guys are in prison for 6 months now. Again, any judge worth a pinch of shit, in my view, would say, hey, you've had 6 months to get this case. Get your evidence together and it's just taking us a long time. It didn't take you a long time going out arresting all these people. How come you're not putting those sort of resources into going through the evidence? Can you just keep in there for another 3 months? Yeah, okay, not a problem. But a judge that's worth a pinch of shit, I'm not keeping this person in prison a second longer. And by the way, I hope they sue the crap out of you guys for compensation for wrongful detention or that sort of thing. So next thing you know, these people are in prison for 9 months. Some of these guys are in prison in solitary confinement, by the way, for trespass, at worst trespass. And even then, that's pretty tenuous in a lot of these cases. So now the government lawyers side, it was just taking us a long time to get the evidence together. Well, it's too fucking bad. I'm letting these people out of prison. You're detaining private citizens who've committed no crime, and yet they're being detained in prison while you guys fuck about. Now, I think they could have got it together much earlier. I think they wanted that Jan 6 committee and all that sort of stuff to go on and to create this sort of furor amongst the community, get the media to really gin everything up. And that I think it was a coordinated campaign to try and discredit anyone involved in that. This is the worst thing since the French Revolution, since Pearl Harbor, since 9/11, since the US Civil War. 650,000 people died in the Civil War, but this is worse. It's worse, and so on and so forth. So the insane ginning up and the absurd inflammatory rhetoric was being used all over, not just the prosecution attempting to gin it up in court, but that bullshit committee all across the media and various groups such as the FBI and the CIA and so on, openly suppressing any social media views that may contradict that narrative. So now when we look at, I was looking at the lawyers, or some of the lawyers, didn't look at them all. It's a huge job going through every document. But looking at some of these lawyers, and I'm surprised at how long they waited before they filed documents in court for the the government to show what evidence they had. So the lawyers representing them, remember these people are in prison. And the charges are vague, to say the least. There's no evidence they've produced. They're just this wild rhetoric, and they're being detained. And again, trespass is the a minor misdemeanor is the worst they're really going to get them on. But the lawyers representing them are waiting sometimes many months, and 6-7 months is or between 5 and 7 months in many cases. The lawyers representing these people are waiting 5 to 7 months before they even file for the government to say, the filings to say, well, what's your case? What's your evidence? What evidence do you have to justify keeping my client in prison, or even to bring charges, let alone the prison? The prison was an outrage, by the way, as the FBI raids were and so on. This is an outrageous abuse of state power and has all the hallmarks of a very insecure tyranny and not a very confident government that easily and comfortably won an election that was in a very undisputed way. So anyway, they've got... They wait 5 to 7 months before they even file to say, where's your evidence? Now, that to me is extraordinary for people that are in prison. Their clients have been in prison for 4, 5, 6 months before they file documents, the lawyers for the people in prison, before they file to say, show me the evidence you've got to the government. Now, if you're going to put my client in prison, I want to know right now, today, what evidence you have. And it better be good. Because if you want to detain them, which is serious, when you detain someone, that's getting serious. When you detain somebody, you must show that you reasonably believe, and you have the evidence to back it up, that they have committed a crime and of a capital nature, or that they're a multiple time repeat offender or something. But instead, there's little, if any, evidence was produced at the time when these people were originally incarcerated or put in prison. It was arbitrary detention. It was one of the most classic cases of arbitrary detention I think I've ever seen in the Western world, at least. You might see it in third world banana republics and so on, but very unusual, I think, and rare in the Western world, certainly by my reckoning. And they arbitrarily arrest these people without evidence. They couldn't accuse them of spitting on the sidewalk. But nonetheless, that happened. But no, there was no lawyer pushback that I can find to say, well, again, where is the evidence? It's all very well to use flowery rhetoric of insurrection and 9/11 and the Civil War. It's all very well to use that. that's not evidence. It's just flowery rhetoric. So anyway, 6-7 months down the track, 9 months down the track, there's still no evidence. Now, again, you're a judge. The prosecution said, I want you to detain these people because we think maybe they did something. We don't know what. We can't prove it. We haven't got the evidence. But can you just keep them in prison there while we go and get it? And again, they're not alleging murder and this sort of stuff. So why would any judge want to keep someone in detention unless it was a very serious offence that could be proven? Some vague references to treason or something, that's bullshit. So 9 months down the track, and lawyers representing some of these people. Now, I don't know whether these lawyers are really representing these people or not. It seems not. They're going to, including, guys like QAnon Shaman and so on, they're going to their clients and saying, look, the government wants to put you in prison for 3 years or whatever it is. I think you should take the deal and waive all your rights to appeal it later. Now, the government prosecutors couldn't ask for more than that. That's like, wow, you're giving us everything we want here. This is fantastic. And the QAnon Shaman is not a lawyer. I mean, he didn't strike me as being someone that could grasp the fine details of a legal argument. So one assumes that he completely deferred to whatever legal advice he might have received. Not just him, but others as well. And in my opinion, the lawyer was effectively operating on behalf of the government. They were a government representative, representing the state and representing the prosecution, whilst pretending to represent their client. And I think, in my view, quite a few of those clients that the lawyers had, were sold out. They took pleas they didn't need to. They went. They agreed to terms and conditions that they shouldn't need to, and the terms and conditions in themselves, I would question the legality of. So now there's a lot of pieces here. You've got an activist prosecution, a very, very politicized ideological process. You've got activist judges. So it would have, it's difficult for anyone to navigate through that. So you need a tough lawyer that's representing you, and is going to have to fight a lot of battles, legal battles, I guess, to make sure that either A, you don't go to prison, or B, that you're let out, in quick time. It's almost incredible to think that any judge would keep someone in prison arbitrarily without proper charge or evidence for 9 months, while the government says, it's just taking us a bit of time to find the evidence or to put it all together. A lot of work to do, Your Honour, and just give us more time. And again, I say, that they didn't need time to go and find these people. They could organise FBI SWAT teams left, right, and centre to go and scoop them up. But so they had the resources, so they wanted to do it. The bottom line is that they didn't have the evidence. They never did. So they wanted to make the process itself a crushing process. Now, comparing, and again, we need to understand the difference between legal law and ideological law. We really must come to grips with that, because more and more of the legal process in the Western world has been infiltrated by the globalists, and the globalists know they can't win if the law remains sacrosanct. They have to turn it into an ideological process. They must do that if the globalist project is to be implemented. It's key to the globalist project being implemented. Whereas if the rule of law and due legal process are kept, again, as sacrosanct, then it makes it much, much harder for the globalists to do what they're doing at the moment. Looking at the first courts that I was aware of in the Western world, the first courts to go ideological were the divorce courts. That was kind of where it began. That was sort of the pilot test run, if you will, of ideological law. And judges there were given sweeping discretionary powers when they were not required to actually abide by the law. So they could do things, and did do things, like the ideologically favoured one, the minority person, whoever it was, had a very low bar of evidence to meet, very, very low, as the state did here in accusing the January 6th people. That effectively the bar was on the ground. It was floor level. All they had to do was sort of insurrection and treason and that was enough for a judge to go, right, bang, prison for you. Whilst sometimes it did, whilst the divorce courts weren't involving capital offence prison type stuff, although they did send people to prison. Typically it was men only, but they did send people to prison. Now, one case that I was aware of where it was alleged that the man had a motorbike in spare parts in his garage, and that couldn't be found. That his ex-wife said that she'd seen it there, and it wasn't there now. Therefore, he must have sold it. Now, she didn't have to prove any evidence of that. She just had to allege it. And then the judge said to the guy, well, what have you done with those motorbike spare parts? Where have they gone? You must have sold it to somebody. And have you declared the money that you got from selling the spare parts of the bike? Now, we're talking a few $1,000s here, if indeed that ever existed. And the guy denied that the spare parts were there. And that's his word against hers. But the judge said, no, I'm going to believe her and not believe you. And I'm going to put you in prison. I'm going to put you in prison until you tell me who you sold those motorcycle spare parts to and how much money you got for it. So the guy just gets thrown in prison for that. Now, the judge's got the power to do that, but doesn't require the evidence. The judge can just arbitrarily do it. And so that was the first ideological court where these sort of things go on, and that the lawyers representing their clients, particularly if it was the man, the lawyers actually didn't work for the man. The man was paying them, but they actually didn't work for him. They weren't representing him in the court. They're actually representing the state and the ideological outcome the state wanted. Now, there were some exceptions, and I'm sure you can always find exceptions in everything, but that was actually the architectural structure of that court, very ideological. So the lawyer that the man was employing, supposedly the lawyer to represent him, was really representing the state's interest. That lawyer's job was to try and talk their client, the man who was paying them, into accepting a verdict and an outcome that the state wanted, an ideological outcome the state wanted. So I've sort of come across this where my lawyer, guys working sort of in offices I've been, my lawyer told me I should just give her the house and I should just give her this and give her that, and it will be better for everybody in the end. My lawyer said that we were really equal partners, and so she was entitled to all this and to the children's heritage, and I really should give this, and I should really roll over and do that, and I should pay alimony on top of child support as well as paying for school and this. But the lawyer was representing you, not them, not the state, not her, that sort of thing. And so the amount of time I heard that story. Now, these are people who are making above average incomes, not rich, by the way, but making above average incomes. So it was like a vicious screwing of the guy, getting as much out of him, raping him financially, getting as much out of him as they could, as quickly as they could. But that's the outcome the state wanted. And these lawyers being paid by this man, being paid by their client, is actually representing the state. So I think I'm reasonably sure, looking at certainly the pattern of behaviour here, with just too many of these lawyers. And I don't know how they got appointed, or whether they were legal aid, or whether they were lawyers recommended by the government, or what it was. But it's quite clear, in my view, that many of these lawyers actually represented the government and represented the government outcome, the ideological outcome the government wanted. And they wanted a lot of scalps. They wanted a lot of prison terms. They wanted a lot of charges being successfully processed through the courts. So they could say, look, and we had 1 million people charged with evil wrongdoing and treason and insurrection. And look, you see, so you're right, January 6th, look at this, look. But in fact, it's all an orchestrated piece of theatre. and it's nothing to do with the law or the seriousness of the charges or indeed the seriousness of the behaviour on that day, and the effort and time and energy that the globalist controlled sort of end of town is putting into this. It's very clear that no matter what the outcome of an election that suits us, where our candidates get up, that we're not going to accept or countenance any questioning of that under any circumstance. If you do question it, make no mistake, we'll put you into prison, and we don't need a reason for it. We'll make something up if we have to. So that's my view on that, and I think it's one of the darkest episodes in American legal history and Western legal history, certainly that I've seen. But it shows you the reach of the globalists, that they can corrupt the prosecution, the FBI, the CIA, the judges, the courts. They can corrupt the body politic. They can do everything, and they can do it. And I don't think any one of those people that did those things will ever be held accountable. Embarrassed maybe, but never be held accountable. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.